Well, hi there and welcome to the workshop. This is Chess-Based Workshop. My name's Steve. Thanks for clicking on the link and joining us. We're picking up where we left off last week. We were talking about fooling around with the 2D boards in Chess-Base and Chess-Base Lite, and what we're looking at here, Fritz12, also works with some of our previous versions of Fritz as well. You can change the colors of the board by right-clicking. This is a brief review of what we talked about, by the way. You right-click on the board, go to Board Design, and you have a pull down that gives you a whole bunch of different options, and you can do different things with it. A couple things we didn't cover last week because it's a little more involved. One of them is the plain color option. What this allows you to do, first you click on it. Well, let me back up a little bit for a minute. Let's go back to green marble. You'll notice that when one of the preset boards is selected, like green marble, you have several buttons here that are grayed out. They're in halftone, and you can't get to them. You can click on that all day long, as I'm doing now, and nothing happens. There's only two ways to get to these buttons, to make these buttons active. One of them is plain color. When you click on it, whoop, they suddenly become available to you. What you do is you just click on white, which means white pieces. You have white and black for pieces, and light and dark squares. You pick on white for the white pieces, and it gives you options. It's basically your color palette from Windows. You'll see this in a bunch of different programs, particularly graphics editing programs, where you can pick different colors. Now, I have a really hideously ugly chess set that, for all that, I'm actually kind of fond of in a bizarre way. It was made in the early 90s when everybody was into neon colors. And I have this chess set. You remember cars were like bright screaming pink or aqua blue, and people wearing, especially caps, ball caps, were bright screaming green or bright screaming yellow or hot pink. That was when this chess set was made, and I call it my eye strain chess set, because if you stare at it for a while and you stare at a white wall, you actually can still see the position. So what I'm going to do is try to make this look kind of like that chess set. And believe it or not, you're going to think I'm lying, but this is what color the set is. I believe the white pieces are orange, so I've selected white, and I'm going to click on orange. It's not quite screaming orange enough. I think I can make it a little brighter, but that's close enough. So we'll say OK. We'll select black. The black pieces are kind of a fluorescent lime green. The light squares are hot pink. I guess that's close enough. And the dark squares are dark blue. And kind of a little bit brighter, about like that. Now watch what happens when we click apply. And there's our chess set. That is a really butt-ugly set. As I said, I've got this really butt-ugly set from the early 90s, and this is a pretty close approximation of what that set looks like. However, you would not want to play on this set in Fritz. You would want to go for some other colors, but that's how plain color works. That's an extreme example of how plain color would work. We'll go back to green marble before you go blind, and we could try other things. We can go to plain color and try other options that are not quite so extreme. Maybe yellow for the white pieces, black pieces, make them kind of a gray for whatever reason, and we can try that and see what it looks like. And that's not nearly as ugly, but it's still not terribly attractive because you don't have a terrible great amount of contrast between the black pieces and the board. Plus, it didn't really come out gray, it came out kind of a white. So this is one of those things you kind of need to fool around with to get a feel for, but you can change the colors that way. But what's a more interesting way to do it is you go to color schemes and pull that down again and go to user BMP. I find user BMP to be an interesting name because actually you can use JPEGs now or BMPs. There was one time where you could only use BMP bitmap graphic files, but now the program does allow you to use JPEGs, JPG graphics files. Let's show you how this works first, and then we'll talk about the files themselves. You have options for light squares, dark squares, the margin, which is the border around the board, and then the white and black pieces. So we'll go to light squares first, and I have downloaded some textures off of the internet that I have decided to try to use with this. So we just clicked on light squares. Let's pick this texture, which is a white marble, and we'll click open. Go to dark squares, click, and we'll go with a dark marble for the dark squares. Click here, and we'll click close, and then apply. and here we have our chessboard. That's a nice looking board. The quibble that I would have with this is that the black pieces don't stand out very well. Like there's a black pawn on D6 right here that is all but invisible. Same with G7. So maybe not a good choice. Looks really good. I may have to tweak the pieces a little bit if I'm really set on using these particular squares. But you can use any JPEG or BMP graphics files for your squares. There's some ways to make your life easier. One of them is if they're square, that works well. If you download one that's rectangular, you may get some funny results. So you may have to use a graphics editing file to change the shape of the graphic that you've downloaded. You can also change the format. If you download one that's a GIF file, GIF file, it needs to be a BMP or a JPEG. You can change the file format simply by, usually in most graphics programs, simply by opening the GIF file and then saving it again in the format that you want. Now, where do you get these files? You get them on the internet. There's about a bazillion of these things out there. There are websites that specialize in what they call textures. And that's what you want to look for, is if you're going to Google for this, is look for textures. There's a lot of sites that offer backgrounds, textures, colors, buttons, all kinds of things for websites. If you're putting together a web page, that's a great place to find these textures, or on those kinds of sites that make these sorts of things available. But do a search for web textures or graphics textures. Just Google for that kind of stuff, and it'll turn up piles of these things. But what you're going to have to do is don't just download one for white squares, one for black squares, and then try it, and then look at this and say, that's not quite working. Then go back to the internet and download another couple of textures. Get a whole bunch at one time, and that way you can mix and match and fool around and get different things, as I've done here. Let's try something else, since that didn't work out quite right. Let's go for a brick effect. So we'll pick some white bricks, and then we'll go to dark squares, and we'll pick some darker colored bricks, and we'll click apply and see what that looks like. That almost works. The biggest problem that you run into here is that the dark squares, the lines between the bricks, are a little bit too dark. It doesn't quite get it, but it's closer to the kind of thing I was looking to do. So we'll try one more thing here, and we'll go for stones, white stones, and we'll try some blue stones, a little bit darker than a turquoise, and we'll click apply. And right there, I think I've pretty much hit one out of the park. I would play on this board. This is the kind of thing I'm looking for when I'm trying to design my own chessboard. I still think the black pieces don't quite stand out enough. There's ways to tweak it to try to make the black pieces look a little better. But this is the kind of thing you can do. There's other things you can do with it as well, by the way. You can use textures to change the white and black piece appearance, and you can also change the margin. That's this black border between the table and the playable area of the chessboard. You can download textures to change the border as well. But we'll leave it with the squares at this point. I'll give you another tip for downloading graphics to use as these backgrounds. You can use photographs. You can use any kind of a graphic file. However, I don't recommend using a photograph. I've tried this. You'll find some actress or somebody you think is really pretty. I remember one time we were fooling around with this, me and a couple friends, and we found a picture. Back in the day, we found a picture of Cindy Crawford, and the guy said, "Oh, why don't you make the dark squares look like Cindy Crawford?" And I was like, "All right, fine." So we went ahead and cut it down into a square and put it in here. And the weird part is, you really couldn't see the face very well unless you make the board way bigger by dragging this over here. And maybe pulling in the old days you'd get rid of the menu items. In this case, you'd pull the ribbon up, etc. You can make the board way bigger, or go to a full screen effect. Even then, you don't get to see the face very well. And then you're looking at 32 of this face staring back at you, which is also kind of disconcerting. So photographs tend not to work wonderfully well. You generally want to stick with textures that look like wood or look like stone. Give you another example while I'm thinking about it here. We'll go back and we'll pull user BMP up again, and we'll do light squares as kind of a blonde wood, dark squares as a darker wood. Now you've got a whole bunch of wood sets that you can use in the program that come with it, but you may want to try something else. And this is kind of what a wood texture will look like. If I was going to, I probably wouldn't use this board. I would go for probably a little blonder wood and maybe a little darker wood for the dark squares. But that gives you an idea of what you're looking for. If you're going to put textures in there, it comes out way better than photographs. Certainly try it if you want to. I had a board for a while where all the dark squares looked like Godzilla, just for chuckles. So there's all kinds of ways you can fool with this. But generally textures, wood, metal, stone, brick, whatever it happens to be, tend to work better than photographs. But that's how you can customize your 2D boards in Fritz12, like we're looking at here, also in ChessBase, and in older versions of the software. This has been kicking around for a little while in the software for a few years now, so you can customize your board the way you want it. Next time around, we're going to take a look at some things you can do with the 3D boards in ChessBase Workshop. Until then, have fun.